Really good to be here with you. Really good to see you all, meet you, see some of you again that I recognise. And I'm Clarise, as Lorraine said, and it's really, really nice to be here with you this afternoon. So I thought we could start by just getting to know each other a bit. So it would be great if in the chat you could introduce yourself by name if you're comfortable doing that, and just share how you are feeling today based on the weather conditions inside your head. So rather than I'm fine or happy, if your headspace was a weather condition, what would the weather in your head be like today? So you can just pop that in the chat so we can get a kind of sense of what everyone's feeling like. So not the weather outside, the weather in your head. And if you are watching back on the recording, perhaps you can just scribble it down. And while you're doing that, I will introduce myself. So I'm Clarise, and yes, I'm a coach, mindfulness teacher, and breathwork guide. And I've been working in mental health and wellbeing for the last 16 years, particularly focused on trauma and trauma-informed approaches to care. I recently delivered the Mindfulness for Stress course, which you might have heard about, and there'll be another one coming up in the autumn. I'm going to be sharing some tools with you today, and many of the tools that I share with you are things that have supported me myself. They have helped me to become a less anxious person, to manage my anxiety, to manage my stress, and to find more enjoyment in life, and to take things a little bit slower and manage things as they come. So, I think it's really important that we get to know ourselves more deeply so that we can have that experience. So that's what I'm bringing for you today. It is just an hour. This is a taster, but there are going to be some tools that you can take away and you can use whenever you want them to. So I'll share a little bit about the weather in my head today. The weather in my head is kind of like I grew up near Dartmoor, and it's kind of like Dartmoor in terms of the fact that it's like kind of in the mist. But I know that when I just come over the hill, there's going to be beautiful sunshine, amazing landscape. I think that's representative of the fact that I'm moving house this weekend, so kind of waiting to just go over the hill and get into the new house. So let's see how you're feeling. We've got sunshine, quite a bit of sunshine. Good to see some wind. A few people with foggy kind of conditions. Yeah, a little mixture there. Okay, well, let's get into it and see how you feel at the end. So what we're going to do today is explore simple ways to support emotional well-being, including understanding stress, processing emotions, and creating small moments of pause and reflection. So I will speak a little bit more in this session than I usually do. If you come along to the 8-week course, it's much more spacious, but today's session is an overview. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat if you have them and you want me to answer them immediately. And we'll also have time for Q&A and reflections at the end of the session also. So contribute in whichever way feels right for you. I've kind of split this session into 4. So we'll start by understanding stress, move on to self-care and recognizing our emotions, and then we'll do a practice so that we can take a pause together before we'll move on to anything that you would like to share. So I hope that suits everyone for today and it's what you're expecting. Let's get into it, shall we? So we'll start with a little bit of understanding our stress. So to be emotionally healthy, we first need to have an understanding of what it means to experience poor mental health. And so, some of you might be familiar with the stress bucket. I absolutely love this as a way to explain what's happening for us when we are feeling stressed or when we are not experiencing stress. So, essentially, the stress bucket is our capacity for stress, it's how much stress we can hold. So, um, you will notice that there are particular things that cause you stress. So that might be family, it might be being stuck in traffic, it might be moving house. All of these things kind of turn on the taps and they fill our stress bucket. And a little bit of stress is manageable. So I'm going to use my pointer here. When we've got a little bit of stress, we might be feeling relaxed or even coping well. But the more and more taps that kind of go on and the more and more full our bucket becomes, the more we start feeling stressed or getting into the overwhelmed space. It would be good in the chat if you wouldn't mind sharing some of the things that fill your bucket. What are some of the taps that you have in your life that fill up your bucket? When we are looking at stress and the things that that fill up our bucket, we then start to think about the things that can empty our bucket. So this is what we're going to focus on today, is what really empties our bucket. So these are like the valves in our bucket, the holes that allow the bucket to empty, because we might have all of these stresses like prepping for surgery or family pressures, waiting for test results, constant worry, being good enough. These are all things that are adding to our stress bucket. And I'm not here today to change those things. I can't take away those things for you. I can't take away the work stress. But what I can support you to do is to add more holes, more valves into your bucket. And those valves are things, they're tools and techniques that help us to feel good. They're things that you enjoy doing that help you to de-stress. Something else that's quite interesting about this image is that we also have this extra valve here, this tap. And what's interesting about this is that many of us might have some unhelpful coping mechanisms. These are things that might feel like they are emptying our bucket, but actually they just add straight back in. So common examples of this are things like alcohol. I'm not admonishing you if you like a glass of wine, but we know that that might be something that we do to de-stress, is share a bottle of wine, and then actually what happens then, I have a really poor night's sleep, and so actually how does that then, I wake up, I feel quite stressed, I feel quite groggy, then that's adding back into the bucket. Another example that I like to use is spending lots of time on our phones, on social media, scrolling. Okay, I just need to switch my phone off. I just need to switch my brain off. And so I'm just going to sit and scroll through, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And then actually, how do we feel at the end of that? Again, start, questioning our self-worth, etc. How does that end up feeding back into the bucket? You will know for yourself what your more unhelpful coping mechanisms are, and you begin to see how this stress bucket works, so we can begin to understand ourselves a little better here. What can happen is that if we don't have enough of those valves, those holes in our bucket, we begin to become overwhelmed and our stress bucket begins to overflow. So we're losing capacity, essentially. And this is the state that we are in when we are close to or experiencing burnout. You might experience intense anxiety, perhaps depression, severe fatigue, irritability, physical symptoms like headaches or tension. And this can send us into some of our more kind of stress responses. So we've got fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And you might be familiar with some or all of these. So fight is a stress response that's built on this idea of us seeing a bear and fighting a bear. But really, in today's terms, it's actually us having an argument with a colleague or a family member because we're feeling so overwhelmed and stressed. Flight is running away from the situation. So in that would be running away from the bear, but in real terms that looks like I need to get out of here, I can't stay in this space anymore. And you might find that if you're someone that goes into flight mode, that you have to leave the house when something becomes overwhelming. You may even need to drive away, and that suggests that that would be more of your stress response. Freeze is that whole kind of deer in headlights response. So perhaps you may lose the capacity to speak or think properly. You might find that you absolutely disassociate from the situation and what's in front of you. And then fawn, and this is a newer addition to stress responses. But fawn is essentially befriending. So it's that people-pleasing behavior where, to keep safe rather than fight, you might try and make sure that somebody's on your side so that you can stay in that safe response. So this might be trying to fix things or feeling that you've done something wrong. So let me try and do everything I can to appease you. That would be more of the fawn response. I remember when I was in a trauma-informed session and first heard of fawn, and I felt so seen. So, oh, okay, that's why I've never really identified with the other three before quite so much. Maybe freeze, but fawn, there it is. So it's interesting for you to reflect on, like, which of these makes most sense for me. When we start to understand our responses, yeah, you do. When we start to understand our responses more, we understand ourselves better. That helps us to place ourselves in a more emotionally healthy space. So you might want to just have a think about, yeah, which of these feels right for me? And it's not binary. You may move between them in different types of situations, depending on the type of emotional safety that you feel in a space. So we don't want to be in that space, ideally. It doesn't feel good to be in that space where we're feeling like we need to run away, fight, we're completely dissociated, or we're trying to lean in and do something to appease someone. Ideally, we want to be managing our stress bucket, because something else that happens is when we get to that space where it's overflowing and we're overwhelmed, is that we can reduce our capacity for stress. What I mean by that essentially is that your bucket gets smaller. So tend to find that then it might be that you feel that, I used to be able to cope with so many more things, but now actually, 3 taps turn on and quite quickly I feel very stressed, and that's not unusual to happen. So it's helpful then to think about what it is that empties our stress bucket. So in the chat, tell me some of the things that empty your stress bucket. Something that I find that really empties mine is breath work. Something that's common in emptying people's stress buckets is slowing down. So we can often be doing things in such a rush, which adds to our sense of stress. So when we're rushing around doing things, we're telling our nervous system that there is something wrong. And then we end up rushing all tasks. So we end up rushing doing the cooking or the washing up, or walking the dog even can become a rush, just a quick rush around with the dog, just looking down at the phone rather than looking around us. So really slowing down can be something that's really helpful. Let's see some of the things that are helpful for you. We have got walking, yes, and walking the dog specifically. Cleaning, I wish that was me. Really happy for you. Breathing, taking a break or talking to someone, prayer and singing. and box sets, sewing and crafts. Lovely. It's really great to see these because sometimes we might not realize that actually these are things that help us too, and it can be a reminder when other people are sharing theirs that actually, oh yeah, that's something that I really like to do actually and would like to make more time for. I see that gardening just dropped in there as well. Really nice. Hands in the earth. Lovely. Some of the ways that we can slow down more are just kind of taking notice. So some of the things that you've mentioned, for example, how can we make them just that little bit more enjoyable? How can we just slow them down just a little bit more? Even just slowing down some of our everyday tasks can help to empty that stress bucket. Like, can we actually brush our teeth and just be present while we brush our teeth? Like, just do that task a little bit slower, and it's not going to add to your day. It's taking a few more seconds to brush your teeth, and to not hurt your gums can just be so helpful in actually really slowing down your nervous system. Noticing the steam that rises from your cup when you make your cup of tea, things like that can just be so beneficial for us. Okay, so let's think about that some more. What tends to happen, and it might not be the case for you, but what can happen for a lot of people is that we can ignore our needs until we're already overwhelmed. So until we're at that stage where that bucket is in stress or is overflowing, and we think, gosh, I really need to do something for myself at that point. What I would encourage for you to get to that space of feeling really emotionally healthy is to practice self-care first. It's preventative. It's something that we do before we feel stressed to prevent us from getting to stressed, rather than something we do when we're already there as the cure. I love this whole analogy about the fact that you can't run a marathon without training. It's exactly that. We can't just expect ourselves to have the capacity to do everything, or to be able to manage all of those stresses that we experience without actually preparing first. So it's that real understanding that self-care is necessary. And I know for some there can be the feeling that self-care is selfish, and it's absolutely not. It's there to support us. And when we talk about self-care, it's important to recognize that we're not just talking about a bubble bath, although if that works for you, that's amazing, and bubble baths are great. But it's actually daily maintenance. It's not just something that we do once in a while. It's about boundaries, about making sure that we're not saying yes when we mean no, or we don't have capacity. It's connecting with ourselves and with others, and it's regulating ourselves, slowing down, making sure we have enough of those valves in our stress bucket. And in this context, self-care can be really tiny. It doesn't have to be a big thing, and sometimes it is. Like sometimes it is a huge thing, like spending the day at a spa, and that's amazing. But it doesn't always have to be that. It can be real micro practices that help us to become more connected to ourselves and our kind of internal world and what's happening in the here and now for us. So some of the things that I really like are things that can just be done in 30 seconds, because we recognize that people are busy, they've got a lot going on, and actually might not have the space all the time to go and book in. I'm going to use the spa day example. What tends to happen in that case is we'll say, like, oh, I really need some time, so I'll book that in for a month's time. And actually, what can we do in the meantime? So, in the chat, perhaps you would like to say some of the things that you could do in 30 seconds. Or if you can't think of the things that you can do, where have you got 30 seconds in your day? Because something I often find is that people will say to me, I do not have time for self-care. And I challenge you that you have 30 seconds in your day somewhere. And whilst you are popping those things in, I will, journaling, that's lovely. Yeah, journaling's a great example. I like to write a quick note about the day or a rant or a quick win. That's really lovely. Okay, so let me know some of the things that you would do in 30 seconds that could be that little bit of self-care. And I'll share with you some of mine as well that you can take away. Something that I really like is just taking a bit more time to wash my hands more mindfully and using that as a bit of a reset. So that's, it's tactile, and it's nice to be able to recognize that rather than just kind of doing the routine that you always do when you wash your hands. It can be nice to just spend that time, like 30 seconds. Just, I mean, ideally you'd wash your hands for more than 30 seconds, but the time at which you wash your hands, just really noticing that. I see that somebody else says potter, and I think by that you mean having a little potter around the house, which I absolutely love. Cooking, going out in the garden, absolutely, just breathing in the fresh air. Cuddle my boy, gorgeous. Sitting in the conservatory, stroking the dog, focusing on breathing. You're going to like what's coming up in a bit. Something else in relation to cleansing that can be really useful is when you're having a shower in the evening, just visualizing the day washing off you and going down the plug hole, just really seeing that in your mind's eye and thinking, oh, it's a fresh start that day, especially if you've been at work or you've had a tricky day, perhaps you've had a tricky appointment, just seeing that kind of washing off you. Yeah, some love for evening showers in the chat there. Something, if you are someone that works at a desk, something I really enjoy is just feeling my feet on the floor and taking one slower exhale, just feeling the breath come out of your body. Especially, we talked about those stress responses earlier, and sometimes we can have stress responses to things that seem completely out of proportion. So, perhaps you're in a meeting and you might notice that you're starting to feel quite stressed, and actually to get to that space of feeling more regulated, just reminding yourself that you're here in this space and feeling your feet on the floor, taking that exhale can be really helpful. Yeah, walking barefoot on the grass, someone says, really, really nice way to regulate ourselves, something that we can do in just 30 seconds, really lovely. Putting the phone on silent, that's great. And that's something that takes a second and lasts much longer. I love that. That's brilliant. What else have we got? Cold water dips. Very nice. Taking a little longer with skincare. Yeah, really nice. And that's that lovely self-massage again. And that's something that can be really nice is just, taking time to feel your skin. Even just running your fingertips along your skin can be really nice and really soothing. Though any of those kind of like self-soothing practices. You might like to challenge yourself to do something 5% slower, just one thing in a day. I'm just going to practice doing this one thing 5% slower. 5% is not a lot. It can feel quite nice. I think that something that a lot of people might do is just instantly responding to messages. So it's interesting, someone said putting their phone on silent, because actually sometimes things can really activate us. So it might be an email, it might be a text message, whatever it might be. Actually, do we need to respond to that straight away? Can we just take 30 more seconds, or maybe even more, can be really helpful. Something that myself and a colleague often do is put on some music and have a good dance out. So it doesn't have to be, I see some nods there. Doesn't have to be for long. It can just be, okay, let's just see whatever's on the radio right now, or putting on your favorite song and just having a good shake out and feeling that. Yeah, I love music, singing, and dancing. The trio. Brilliant. Okay. So self-inquiry is incredibly important to this, so really understanding ourselves. So let's come to that piece of self-inquiry. Now, I noticed that this wheel has quite a lot of spelling mistakes in it. I didn't actually create it, but it is one of the ones I prefer. So I'm going to have to find a different one. But for now, you'll know what the words mean, even when they have some typos. So let's actually understand our emotions. So at the beginning of this session, I asked you to identify your emotions using a weather condition. And this supports us to start thinking of our emotions more deeply, and just in a slightly different way. It helps us to move away from what could be an automatic response of like, I'm fine, I'm okay, thanks, it's all good, yeah, no worries. And that's why so many mental health organisations have campaigns around asking twice, especially in the UK, because it's an incredibly British trait to say, yeah, fine, everything's fine, as an automatic response. And so we ask again, or we ask slightly differently. So what I'm doing with this emotions wheel, and if anyone works with children, you'd be very familiar with this. I'm actually helping us to expand our vocabulary around our emotions, to think slightly differently around how we feel. And I think that this is something that's really helpful for all of us. I come back to an emotions wheel fairly regularly when I'm thinking, how do I actually feel? Because it can be really helpful to just look at this and think, yeah, actually, the word that I'm looking for is scared, but I didn't recognize that immediately. I'm experiencing fear, but I didn't realize that. I thought I was just feeling anxious or whatever it might be. So it might be that instead of, oh, I feel bad, it's like I feel overlooked or I feel defeated. And finding that specificity creates more agency. It helps us to think differently about how we're feeling. It helps us really understand ourselves. So just take a little look at this emotions wheel now, and you'll see that they're kind of in categories. And just think about what word fits best for how you're feeling right now. There's no need to share. You just take a second to just have a little look. What fits you right now? And it might be more than one word, and that's absolutely fine. And once we can name our emotion, we can better work with it. So let's look at a tool for working with our emotions. This is the RAIN model, and it's a tool that we can use to better understand ourselves. And it doesn't help us to change our experience, but it helps us to accept our experience and can support us to let go of resistance to what's happening and understand what we must work with so we can have a more pleasant experience. So let me talk you through each of the areas here. So it's an acronym. So R is for recognize. So this is really about us identifying and acknowledging the emotions that we're feeling without judgment. And the without judgment piece is really important. So we're not saying, I feel like this and I shouldn't, or I shouldn't feel like this because, or even there are people in a worse situation than me, all of these kind of automatic thoughts that can come in. We're saying, this is what I'm feeling, and I'm just understanding it as it is. There's no judgment about whether it's valid or not. It just is, and we absolutely recognize that. And then we allow it. So we just allow the feeling to be present and we accept it as it is without trying to suppress it. So we're not trying to change anything. We're just noticing the experience as it is there. And then we will move into investigating. So we'll start to explore perhaps where we feel the emotion in our body, what thoughts are there that are relevant to it, and what it tells us. Because emotions carry information, they're important for us understanding our experience or understanding what's happening for us. So we're just trying to understand more. And then we will move into nurture. So can we treat ourselves with kindness? Perhaps we're practicing positive self-talk and speaking to ourselves as we would speak to a friend. Okay, so let's have a look at doing this together. We'll just go through this model together and create space for ourselves. So I'd like you to bring to mind something that you're struggling with at the moment. Nothing too big. We're practicing here, so we don't want to begin with something that's too tricky. We want to have the opportunity to practice with something that's small but real. So perhaps you are organising a party this weekend and the bunting you've ordered hasn't arrived and you're feeling frustrated about it. Find your situation and I'll guide you. So we'll do this together. You might like to close your eyes or look off to the distance, whatever feels right for you, just to help you feel more focused. And when you've found your situation, just recognize the emotions you're feeling about the situation. You might think back to the emotions wheel, or you might think about it in terms of a weather condition. Recognizing what you feel without judgment. And let's just sit with that. I'm not trying to suppress, just accepting it as it is. It might feel uncomfortable to sit with. Can you begin to feel where that emotion feels most prominent in your body? Perhaps you notice that it feels heavy in your chest, or it might be a tightness in the stomach, tension in the shoulders, just noticing what's happening for your body as you focus on this. What are some of the thoughts that you're experiencing? What thoughts do you notice are coming? What do the thoughts and emotions tell you? And taking time now to nurture yourself. If you were speaking to yourself as you would speak to a friend, what would you say? What could you say to yourself that's positive? What do you need to hear or do? And when you're ready, just take a deep breath in and out. Just step away from that experience, coming back to here and now in this space. Perhaps you want to feel your feet on the floor, remind yourself that you are here in this webinar and not in that situation necessarily. I find this a really helpful tool because whilst we just spent, I mean, even then it was only a few minutes going through it. This is something that once you are, more experienced in using, you can run through relatively quickly in 30 seconds, a minute. It's nicer, of course, if you have the space to give it more time and to spend, as long as you want, really, but 5 minutes with it, just recognizing what's happening, allowing it to be there, looking at it more closely, and then offering yourself that self-soothing, that nurture, that support, speaking kindly to yourself. Is a fantastic tool in that sense. And the more we practice with it, the easier it becomes. If you were finding that quite difficult now, that's absolutely okay. All of these tools and practices can take time to get used to, and it might be that this one is not one that you connect with as much as another. And there are other tools out there that are similar to RAIN as well. It's a nice, easy acronym to remember. Okay, so let's go on to the next piece. I've talked a lot about slowing down and finding some space for ourselves, and it's a huge part of keeping emotionally healthy. So we've looked at how does stress manifest? How do we experience stress? How can we reduce stress? We've looked at that piece of self-care and what are some of the things that self-care can be for us in the long term, in the short term. And we've also looked at our emotions and how we can understand them better and manage them. What I'd like to do now is to bring us to a place of just pausing. So just spending some time just being with ourselves. So what I'd really encourage you to do in this practice is, if you can, just kind of move away from the computer or the phone slightly, or any distractions that are around you, because I'm not going to be talking that much. So it's really a space for you to just pause. So I'm going to lead us through a breath practice, but I'm not going to instruct your breath. I'm just going to ask you to focus on your breath. And everything that we do here is an invitation rather than an instruction. So if you don't want to participate, or you want to do something else that really works for you, then absolutely do that. You might find in this practice that your mind is quite busy, and that's absolutely okay. If you're experiencing lots of thoughts, that's not a problem at all. That's our minds doing exactly what minds do. All we're going to do is breathe. So you might like to close your eyes or lower your gaze. And just relax into your space, allowing the shoulders to drop. Feeling comfortable where you are. And just beginning to focus on the breath. Noticing where the breath comes into the body. And noticing where the breath leaves the body. Perhaps as you exhale, you might notice the warm air on the lips. As you inhale, cool air coming in through the nose. Your body already knows how to breathe. We're going to begin counting each breath. We'll count each cycle, so in and out is 1. In and out is 2. There's no particular pace or depth that your breath should be. You're just counting each in and out breath. And when you get to 5, just start again. If you lose count, come back to 1, going up to 5, starting again. Thoughts come, it's completely normal. Let's come back to the breath and start the count again. There's no right or wrong here, we're just breathing. As you get to your last exhale, just beginning to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Just gently. Perhaps you'd like to bring the body into a stretch. Opening the eyes or refamiliarizing yourself with your surroundings. Coming back to the space. It's just a pause. The breath is a great way to connect back with ourselves and our body. It's helpful to slow down, and it's a really powerful tool that we have access to. We don't need to, find something external. This is something that we already have, something that we've been using from the day that we were born. And so it can be really helpful to just notice our breath just for a moment, as I said earlier, even if it's just one big exhale. I love to sigh, a big sigh can just help to slow us down and help us to come back into connection with ourselves, help us to feel more emotionally healthy, more regulated, and more connected.